So I did my PhD in St Andrews, and it was a very small department, a really lovely department to do a PhD in. We all knew each other very well. We hung out at everybody else's houses. It was a lovely, very intimate environment in the best possible sense. And then my first postdoctoral position was this fellowship at the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics, where it's huge. And when I joined, there just wasn't really much of a community of post culture shock, essentially, on every front. So I just moved to the US. There was culture shock on that front, and there was culture shock of just the institute as well. Suddenly, I was in a much larger pool of astronomers, and I was on an independent fellowship, so I was conducting my own research. So I really had to. It's a sink or swim moment. You have to find your feet and come up with your projects and come up with exciting things to do. And it's a really inspiring environment, but also it was a very different environment. So it required adjusting fast because you only have a postdoc for 3 years if you're lucky. So you have to really make it count. My peers, especially other women astronomers that I started out with in Boston, here in the Netherlands when I was a fellow here, really helped because you could share things with them about your insecurities that you sometimes might not have felt so comfortable sharing with people more senior than you or with guys at your level. So definitely I think the camaraderie that we had, the other women research fellows and postdocs, I think really helped me normalize what I was going through, especially when the really stressful times. But also, I mean, I have had so many mentors of all types. So people who were my advisors, people who weren't my advisors, but just gave me really, really good advice on how to deal with things. I found one of the key things is to share the problems that you're having, and you really get perspective when you do that. So there are many relationships that have helped me get here, and many mentors. Helps, of course, but when you're young, it's hard to share experience. What helps in those situations, if you're coming in for a job that maybe you haven't had the experience for, is to be able to show how quickly you can adapt to things, or how quickly you can troubleshoot or find answers when you haven't had experience in something. So I think being able to show it from the past of, how you've been able to conquer challenges, that always shows skills that we're looking for, even if you don't have the relevant experience. I've applied for way more jobs than I ever got offers, way more. So there are many setbacks. Before I got my first staff position, so there's a transition that you make, sort of getting to your PhD to getting your first postdoc is usually quite doable. Progressing in your postdoc, getting your second postdoc or third postdoc even gets progressively harder. Then the big jump comes getting from postdoc to a more sort of tenure track or a more indefinite sort of open-ended contract type job. And that is a tough transition to make. And that, for me, involved a lot of rejections. So in the end, I was back in St Andrews. I was doing a postdoc in St Andrews, and I was just applying for things that were more open-ended, more tenure track sort of positions. And I basically decided to give myself 6 months. I said I'd give myself 6 months. I would apply for everything out there that I would genuinely want to do, places I would want to live, institutes I'd want to work at, that were in tenure track type jobs. And if it didn't work out after 6 months, no harm, no foul, I would move on with zero regrets. Luckily, in those 6 months, I then got an offer, for a really great offer, to work in Germany at the European Southern Observatory, which is where I built most of my career. And so it worked out because I sort of gave myself a deadline, and then I just chucked myself at the job process wholeheartedly for 6 months. And I decided that's all I was going to do, as well as obviously publish at the same time. And it really worked out. And so that I was lucky. But I think if it hadn't have worked out, then after 6 months, I would actually have moved on and found something else to do, and it would have been fine. Is that we're native English speakers, and or at least we speak it very fluently. And in the scientific world, that gives you a real advantage, because if it's something you're very fluent in, a lot of other scientists are not. And so they can really struggle with that. So that is an unfair advantage. It means you can present yourself much more clearly than many people out there at similar levels of your career. But hacks, what hacks did I do? No, I think the only hack that I've employed lately, in the probably in the last 10 years, in the second half of my career, was learning how to give good talks. I think learning how to give good talks is a really important skill if you can master it. And I would say that is an important hack that will increase your visibility and can get you noticed when you're looking for jobs or to advance in your career. I was always interested in space and astronomy. I was a nerd, a classic nerd when I was a child. So I read a lot of science fiction, loved Star Wars. And so I was always really interested in it. Then when I was in school and secondary, I was pretty good at physics, and that helped me think that this was actually a career path I could get into. And so I knew that it's something I wanted to at least do a degree in. And then in the final year of my degree, I got a chance to do a research project. And I enjoyed that much more than the lectures that I had to attend and exams. And so I decided research was definitely an area in which I could do something interesting and that I was really excited by. So I was always interested in the general area, but then I found that I was also good enough that I could contribute to that area, and that helped me get the confidence to try to get into the field.